It is Friday, the 8th of March 2024. I wake up at 7 am. It's my cousin's birthday and we're going to watch Dune Part 2 tonight. Plus, it's a Friday, so it's just shaping up to be an all-round good day. I'm scrolling through my phone as one does in the morning, and all those good vibes come crashing down when I come across the news that Akira Toriyama had passed away a week ago at the age of 68 years old. No, 68 years young. You know that feeling where it's like something is building up in your chest and it makes its way up? I felt like that. I've been racking my brain over how I should make this video. How do I get across what this man's work has meant to me? So I just want to talk about my experience with the work of his that has affected my life the most, which is Dragon Ball. From the first episode of the original anime up to the latest chapter of the Dragon Ball Super manga. All the movies, the parodies, the memes, the discussions, the power scaling, the arguments, the smiles, the laughs, the screaming, the rages, and all the rest of it, that was thanks to the mind of one man, Akira Toriyama. I didn't grow up with Dragon Ball. Its initial run was before my time. I mean, GT had finished airing a good 6 or 7 years before I was even born. So cast your minds back to 2020, which wasn't that long ago, only 4 years ago. But it was that year like a void year where the COVID pandemic was at its worst and the lockdown was initiated. I was 15 at the time, so now I've got months of spare time on my hands with no clue how to spend it. Up to that point, I had watched a few anime: Attack on Titan, Full Metal Alchemist, the original and Brotherhood, Tokyo Ghoul, My Hero Academia. Hunter x Hunter was probably the longest one I'd seen up to that point, so I made the executive decision to watch the big one, the biggest one that I had heard about even before I even watched my first anime, Dragon Ball. I didn't know whether to watch it in sub or dub. I tried the first episode in both and the dub just felt better to me. It just felt right, so the original and the other Dragon Ball anime I watched in dub. And let me tell you, it was not what I was expecting. I mean, specifically the humour. It was the humour that caught me so off guard. Like Goku tapping Bulma's you-know-what, or Bulma flashing Roshi. I don't even know. I have a few friends who were Dragon Ball fans before I watched it, and they told me that apparently there are people who just started with Dragon Ball Z, which confused the heck out of me. I mean, you're skipping a huge part of the story. I guess they just wanted to get right to the parts that everyone else knew about and talked about, but I don't know. I remember Upa, the native who lived with his father at the base of Korin Tower. I remember Mercenary Tao, the way he threw a log and jumped on it. That was his method of transport. The Red Ribbon Army. I remember Aita, Android 8, and the family he stayed with in some snowy area. His training with Roshi and Krillin. I remember thinking Krillin was so annoying when he was first introduced, but he did grow on me. And the martial arts tournament. Man, the most random assortment of characters. Some big man whose stench knocked people out cold, a woman whose technique was stripping, and a dinosaur guy. I was entertained. I haven't even mentioned the actual Dragon Balls yet. The first wish was a talking pig wanting a soft pair of panties. What do you mean he wished for a pair of panties? Oh yeah, and I remember a specific moment near the end of the original anime. I think it was Goku and Chi-Chi's wedding, where I started to look into the other big names, the big three specifically. Like, Dragon Ball was what really opened the floodgates to everything else. Obviously, all the spare time helped a lot as well. And then with Dragon Ball Z, that's where I really started talking about the series with others on a regular basis. Like, what happened in the latest batch of episodes I'd watched, them explaining things to me like what I missed or what I misunderstood, although in reality those conversations boiled down to whatever fight happened or whatever character appeared, like Raditz showing up or Goku returning and wiping the floor with Nappa. Although I did complain a lot about Chi-Chi, I was seeing Goku go crazy just to return home to his nagging wife and listen. A protective mother makes sense, okay? Her wanting Gohan to be a normal kid makes sense, but tell me, does anyone, and I mean anyone, care about that when you have planet-shaking fights happening next door? I could tell by looking at them that it was something that they also didn't like. You know when you love a series but there's obviously things that you don't like but you just don't mention? It was like that. They agreed with me but it was like, out of all things to talk about, why did you have to bring up Chi-Chi being annoying? Obviously, I haven't forgotten about seeing Super Saiyan for the first time. I knew about it before. I don't think there's any way to watch anime and not know about Super Saiyan, even if you haven't seen Dragon Ball. So it was kind of like a countdown to the moment, you know. And by that point, I was already on the hype train and I just rode it all the way through. I mean, I was a Goku fanboy by this point. I was in that stage where I just watched stuff without critique, so I didn't care if Goku was being stupid or whatever. I was just having the time of my life. And you know what? I could go back and watch any of it again and feel the exact same way. Goku going Super Saiyan, Gohan going Super Saiyan 2, and Super Saiyan 3, which was and still is my favorite transformation in Dragon Ball, with the whole world shaking. These moments just never get old, like doing a Kamehameha or lifting your hands for a spirit bomb. If you did that, it's not weird, it's just the impact that the story this man wrote has had on you. And next comes GT, which I didn't know if I should watch. For context, I didn't even know about filler or filler episodes until halfway through Z, and I also looked up that it would actually take place after Super, but I watched it first since it was released first. And the truth is that I dropped it. I can't remember what episode specifically, but I remember Pan in some rocky mud hut or something like that with... I will say that finding out it wasn't canon probably did put me off a bit, but I would also say that it's that fact which is the reason why I do not consider it and all of its controversy as a stain, I guess you could say, on Toriyama's legacy. Although I did skip ahead, and the ending of GT was so fulfilling. Seeing Goku ride off with Shenron and seeing his legacy with the statue, it's kind of the only satisfying ending from any of the Dragon Ball anime. And with that, I hope that Akira Toriyama himself is honored with something like a statue for what he did for all of us. And finally, Dragon Ball Super, where my statement of not watching things critically is pushed to its limit, because at the time I did not care how stupid Goku was. I was just having a good time, a great time. And the same thing applies here as with GT, where this was kind of Toriyama passing on the reins to Toyotaro, and even though looking back now I can see its imperfections, that doesn't stop me from rewatching my favourite moments and loving the hell out of them as much as I did the first time I watched it. My one regret is that I couldn't witness Ultra Instinct when it first dropped, because that would have been amazing. The movies, Battle of Gods and Resurrection F, seeing Dragon Ball in a more modern style was weird but so cool at the same time. And the Broly movie specifically is still one of my favourite anime movies ever. And the manga is still going to this day with bigger, better fights, more forms, rages, entertainment. And if you read the latest chapter, the interaction that we have between specific characters, I think, is such a nice last chapter. Such a fitting chapter to have been the last one to release before his passing. And you know what? I will admit it, I was a toxic Dragon Ball fan. I heard about the show, this one-of-a-kind story inspired generations of kids, adults, and other stories, all thanks to this one man, and I watched and loved it. I loved the heck out of it. Any bad word against it would piss me off. I didn't act on my impulses, I kept those to myself. And I've grown since then, and remember when I mentioned the big three? After Dragon Ball, I went through them, each of them in their entirety during the lockdown, and beyond that I experienced so many new and unique stories, but in each of them I could see a hint of Dragon Ball's influence. Dragon Ball Z Abridged, a parody spawned out of love of the original, all the games, the console and mobile. I mean, I play Dragon Ball Legends daily. And then we got Dragon Ball Daima, which I just hope that it is something that is worthy of commemorating such a legend, whose work goes beyond Dragon Ball, other manga like Dr. Slump or games like Chrono Trigger. It's like nothing you've ever seen, and we probably won't see the like for a very, very long time. It's a weird situation where we never met this man and he doesn't personally know us, and yet at the same time we're still grieving and mourning his death, because that is just how massive an impact he has had on our lives. when you try to imagine what this world would be like without him and his works, you can't. Because as soon as you start thinking about what he has done, you've already failed. It is impossible to imagine a world without Akira Toriyama.